Go, Daniel.
I welcome you for today's webinar, which is being organized by the EUROPE Direct office in Gozo. As the host structure, the Gozo Business Chamber is the host structure of EUROPE Direct. I'm happy to chair this webinar. The European Commission is putting significant emphasis on digital skills, given that digitalization is one of the pillars of the Green Deal. The Digital Economy and Society Index 2021 report on human capital, presented by the European Commission, highlighted how, in the world of tomorrow, we must rely on digitally empowered and capable citizens, a digitally skilled workforce, and digital experts. Clear responses will be needed to successfully manage demographic trends and close existing skills gaps in the context of the digital and green transitions. Basic digital skills for all citizens and the opportunity to acquire new specialized digital skills for the workforce are a prerequisite to participate actively in the digital decade and to reinforce our collective resilience as a society. In addition to the target on basic digital skills established in the Digital Education Action Plan and the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan, a digital compass proposes to reach by 2030 a target of 20 million employed ICT specialists in the EU, with convergence between women and men. This is what was highlighted in the Digital Economy and Society Index 2021 report. This webinar today will aim to discuss with two professionals in the fields, one in the field of education and the other in the specialized area of building management solutions, about training and career opportunities in the digital sector. It is interesting today how we are going to focus on a new area of the digital sector, which are building management systems. Building management systems are computer-based systems used to monitor and control services such as lighting, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, fire, smoke detection and alarms, motion detectors, CCTV, security and access control, ICT systems, lifts, industrial processes and equipment, shading devices and smart meters, just to give an example. Please feel free to put your comments and questions in the comments box during the webinar and in the Q&A section after the completion of the various interventions. To this end, I would now like to invite our first speaker for today, Anthony Callus, Manager, Training for Industry within MCAST. He is an all-round HR practitioner with over 20 years of experience in educational, financial, ICT, parastatal, and hospitality sectors. He represented various international educational, vocational, and professional organizations in Malta and Libya, and he also served as chairperson and vice chairperson of the Computer Society. So I give the floor to Anthony for the first presentation we have today.
Go, Anthony.
Hello and good morning to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, Daniel, and thank you for the opportunity to the Gozo Chamber as well. As Daniel introduced me, my name is Anthony Callus and I work at MCAST. MCAST has grown over the years. It's been in, how would I say, it's been growing over the past 20 years, and it is now offering as a leading vocational and education institution for Malta and for Gozo. As we know, there are a number of campuses, even in Gozo, and MCAST has grown, especially in various areas, industry sectors, including the ICT. MCAST has sort of become a highly reputable organization, not only in Malta, but also abroad. As MG2I, as we are called, the MCAST Gateway to Industry, we promote part-time courses and full-time courses to people who are in the profession of ICT and in various other professions. But today we will be focusing on ICT. As I said, we have over 20 years of experience, and we provide youngsters and even mature people career routes so that they can reach the aspirations where they wish to arrive to. And we organize various other courses, and we do this also in line with the industry. So whenever we develop a course, we develop a course hand in hand with industry. We sit down with the industry and we learn, and then when we realize that we have enough information, we transform those meetings into a course as required by industry. And this puts us on the leading edge, where we are all the time reading the signs of the time. I mean, years ago, we introduced courses in the aviation because we saw that Malta was moving into that direction. We introduced courses in the manufacturing and in the pharmaceutical area. So we provided courses in that area. So as we can see, MCAST focuses on the needs of the nation. So MCAST is highly involved in helping Malta becoming a hub of activity where we provide youngsters and mature people the possibility to find jobs, enhance their jobs, and enhance their income. At MCAST, we provide over 350 courses in the various disciplines, as can be seen on this slide, ranging from IT, agriculture, engineering, well-being and construction, automotive, woodwork, art and design, sciences, food handling, photography, aviation, and more. Even nowadays, we are entering into areas of conservation, of stone, of buildings, of paintings. So in every area, we get the expertise from industry, and together we teach youngsters and mature people. We help people to acquire a qualification, but not only that, even we help people get a better job. And now, focusing in the area of ICT, I have listed the number of qualifications that we offer, starting from an introduction in ICT, going to a degree in multimedia and software development. Above these, we have also master's degrees and doctorate degrees. But for the time being, I am focusing on these, so that at least we'll get a taste of what MCAST is offering. And this is, I am referring to what I stated a few minutes ago, that all our degrees are built with industry in mind, so that when eventually our students leave MCAST, they can immediately become productive at the place of work. Why? Because in all our disciplines, we not only integrate the practical experience, but also the hands-on, where our youngsters go and spend time working in industry as apprentices. And therefore, that gives the edge for our students, which helps them integrate immediately at the place of work. Apart from the previous slides, which focuses on the full-time work, we offer a large amount of part-time courses aimed primarily at people who are already working, and therefore a part-time job helps either to polish the skills of employees or also to find a niche where one can specialize. These are some of the part-time courses, which range from special areas such as Java programming, Unity gaming, digital forensics, fiber optics, databases, etc. While we not only prepare the students to integrate immediately in the workplace, but we also look after our teachers, our lecturers, and we encourage our lecturers to keep up to date, whereby we bring industry. Like, for example, some months ago, we had a very prominent iGaming company, and they have certified all our lecturers in the development of iGaming platforms, so that our lecturers not only know how to teach, but also know what the industry is preparing, so that our lecturers are in tune, step by step, of where the industry is developing. So it is important that in our way of approaching education, we don't just provide the student with a desk, but we provide lecturers who are experienced. And we do not only make the student sit down, but we help students to practice, which is very important, especially in this fast-moving and changing sector in the ICT. It is moving forward at a very, very fast pace. So once we know what is going on in industry, we take what is happening in industry and we put it in front of our students. So we have not only a hands-on approach, but even the lecturers are reflecting their knowledge into the classroom through the combination of industry practice. Vis-a-vis job opportunities in the ICT, as professionals, one can look at becoming a programmer, systems analyst, project leaders, etc., etc. These are in the ICT sector, but ICT doesn't only happen in ICT companies, but they also take place in various leading industry areas, such as banking. You find programmers working in banks, you find project leaders, and in various other sectors, including manufacturing, including hospitality, in the hotels. I mean, today working in a hotel also has to, a person has to be IT literate, not only how to work the front office or the back office, but in various other disciplines, in the food and beverage area, in the costings area, in the bar. Everything today has to have a knowledge, everyone has to have knowledge in ICT. The more you specialize, the more you gain access to high-performing jobs. So although we are talking about the ICT sector has sort of infiltrated across so many disciplines that one can have a career, as I said, in a bank, in an insurance company, in the agriculture area, in the fisheries, everywhere. So I am saying this so that no one should feel restricted, that if one has a talent as a programmer or as a database administrator, one can apply those talents in various industry disciplines. At MCAST, which includes obviously our MCAST in Gozo, we have libraries where students can continue their research. Our classes in MCAST, both in Malta and in Gozo, they are highly, how do I say, well furnished, not only with furniture, but also ICT labs, workshops to very high standards. So MCAST provides the opportunity where students can come and learn, not only during the day, but also on part-time courses in the evenings and Saturdays, so that we facilitate the learning process, not only in the normal 8 till 4, as we are accustomed, but beyond. So our doors are open to offer the facilities and our courses, so that they provide and enhance, as Daniel was saying, to enhance the human capital increase and puts Malta at the forefront of providing IT literate and professionals on the workplaces. I think I have said enough about me, just a little bit. I graduated in various universities in the UK. At present, I am working at MCAST, where I am sharing my experience with various students and colleagues. And through that, students get a first-hand knowledge of the ICT sector, where I worked with various reputable companies, and also in the hospitality, etc., etc. So I am stating this as an example because, like myself, other lecturers offer their experience, their direct experience. So the student not only learns the theory, but from our background of when we teach not only the book, we teach also through our experiences, which is so important. Okay, so the student gathers a background, not only what the book says, but also what the experience provides. From my end, I think I have reached the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, you can write to me on this platform. I have included links to our short courses and to our normal courses at MCAST, so that you can feel free to see and search what we offer. And again, if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to reply and give answers. If not today, maybe to some other date, and maybe even privately if some people would like to send me an email privately. That is from my end. I thank you. Any comments or questions, please?
Anthony, just a question
Eva?
on my part. You mentioned the parts where you highlighted that lectures at MCAST, obviously your presentation once we come for Ruben Curmi's presentations, where we will be focused on one aspect of the digital sector, but this was very important even for those students who are following us both through this webinar and even for professionals, because that thing was highlighted by you. And I wish to perhaps, if you could clarify the point, you mentioned that lectures at MCAST, you mentioned all those whole array of courses. And you mentioned that they have like a form where their preparation and their training lectures are ongoing to see what the industry needs. Perhaps you can explain further on that point.
Yes, as we all know, the area of ICT is all the time changing, and this imposes on our lecturers, not only in ICT, but even in other disciplines, but here we're looking at ICT. It imposes on our lecturers constant revision and looking into what is coming into the future. And that is why we link with industries such as Microsoft, such as Cisco, such as Unity. We link with these companies so that our lecturers become exposed to what is coming, so that they are ready when eventually, for example, Microsoft, when they upgrade their operating system, our lecturers are already tuned into that operating system. So we try to be that one step ahead, even in, I'm going to mention a different area, like, for example, the electric cars. Electric cars, slowly in Malta, they are coming into Malta. To date, MCAST is the only educational environment where our lecturers are teaching the technology of electric cars. And in doing that, we sent and we brought in here as well industry from the automotive sector. I will obviously not mention names so that I will not make any adverts, but we had organizations teaching our mechanics how to open a car, how to do the charging, how to do the servicing, so that industry knowledge we can then pass on to our students. So that is why we are, how would I say, honored to be a leading college, not only because we have large number of courses, but because we look after our lecturers, so that our lecturers will look after properly and professionally. They look after our students with sort of teaching the latest of technology. Plus, our courses, and I must not forget this, they are all accredited to MQF level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So in having accredited courses, this binds us to deliver high quality education, when I say accredited, they are, MCAST is a self-accrediting institution, but we still have to abide by the authorities in higher and further education, where they do come and check that our courses are properly structured and properly worded, so that we maintain that our vocation to teach is top-notch, which is also an important aspect as the vocation of MCAST. So while we have, on one hand, the important exposure to industry, which helps us move forward, on the other hand, we have to deliver professionally the content of our courses, which are accredited, and obviously when they are accredited, they are recognized by the local community, and not only the local community, because obviously Malta now is part of the EU, and all our qualifications are recognized across Europe, as we say, through the MQF framework. Okay,
and
I hope.
Yes, it was very exhaustive, and in a way, I was impressed also with the list of courses. Even if I'm, say, a professional already working in the ICT industry, but I want to branch out in another industry, like, for example, gaming, I saw that for example, even me, or I say me, imagine I'm an employee, I can opt for a course, for example, in ICT in gaming. I saw one that was ICT in gaming, which was very interesting. And I can do that course, which I think it's
it's good that you are mentioning. For example, last night, yesterday evening, we kicked off a course. Has nothing to do with ICT, but just to give you an idea, we have 20 students attending a course in heat, ventilation, and air conditioning. Many of the candidates that are attending work in different industry disciplines, but they came here to attend and qualify as a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician, so that they will find another route that will offer them a new career. And this is MCAST at Life. It offers alternatives to people who would like to switch from one profession to another. So they came here in the evening. I could see them because I was waiting for them near the class, coming straight after work, eager to learn, to invest in their time, and to invest in their future. Now, this is an example. It could be in the ICT, it could be in the automotive, it could be in various other disciplines. So yes, MCAST is here to help youngsters and mature people in their journey to become professionals, either in what they are doing and maybe take that step further to become a senior or a supervisor, or for an alternative route to find a different zvok bil-Malti, jisir zvok differenti.
Thank you, Anthony. That was very interesting, a presentation, and also insights which you gave us. And that brings also, you mentioned air conditioning units, heating systems, and that basically is an introduction to our next speaker, and Engineer Ruben Curmi. Ruben is an entrepreneur and director at Harbor Solutions, a company that designs and delivers building management solutions. It's a very focused part of the ICT and the digital sector. So for us, it's also, we are trying to showcase the opportunities that there are there for youth, and also from the presentation that Anthony gave us, I encourage you to make the best out of these opportunities that there are out there. Harbor Solutions, from its establishment in 2013, Ruben has led the company, which practically grew from a startup to the well-established and reputable BMS supplier of today. Before joining Harbor Solutions, Ruben spent 2 years as Chief Information Officer at Yellow Pages, which he joined after 16 years spell at Go PLC, where he was responsible for the management systems that are used to monitor and control telecommunications equipment. He graduated in electrical engineering from the University of Malta in 1994 and went on to obtain his warrant in 1998. He subsequently read for a master's degree in entrepreneurship from the University of Malta in 2014, and he is a visiting lecturer on building management systems at the University of Malta and the chairperson of the National Accreditation Board. I welcome you, Ruben.
Thank you.
And I give you the floor.
Thank you, Daniel. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
I imagine we should speak English, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. So yes, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. As you very well said, we are a building management system supplier, and it's interesting. This sector has, over the last few years, like many other sectors, to be honest, experienced a large influx and a large influence from ICT, pure ICT, because building management is today becoming much more heavy in terms on ICT use for obvious reasons. I will have a short presentation which I will explain. I will explain in further detail, but indeed BMS is still an engineering profession, but heavily with a heavy impact of ICT. So for all of the participants and attendees who are in the ICT, I hope this presentation of mine and the introduction to the BMS world will be relevant and interesting. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen. I will share my presentation, and the presentation itself is already telling a lot. Basically, it is a new term. Of course, nowadays we are very much used with new terminology and perhaps sometimes overinflated terminology. Perhaps this is one of them, but basically we're talking about hyper-efficient buildings in the Industry 4.0 era. As everybody knows, the industry at the moment is going through what is known as the fourth revolution, and essentially building management is also following the same path, in the sense that there is a much bigger impact of ICT systems also on building management systems. So to make them more relevant for today and to make them more useful. In general, building management systems were initially designed and implemented for two main reasons. One was the automation of processes. So if you imagine you have a plant room which is providing hot water for a building, for example, using a BMS system, the pumps and the motors and the calorifiers and the boilers, all the equipment used to produce the hot water and make it available in the water tap in the bathrooms, for example, in a hotel, all that equipment is controlled by the building management system to make sure that the system is running, that the required desired temperature at the tap is provided. If there are some faults in the system alerts the maintenance manager. So this was one of the main reasons for BMS, mainly to control the equipment in a building. Then there is a second use for BMS, or used to be, because now there are many more, as we will explain. But the second use for BMS was to try to automate these processes so that you don't require people to constantly go in the plant room and check out the pumps and check out the temperature themselves, but they know that there is a system running in the background, doing the checks, doing the controls, and if something goes wrong, the system will then alert the persons responsible. So there were two, just to summarize, there were two roles. One, to automate the processes and to relieve people from having to do manual work. And the other was to actually control the plant itself, to start up the pump, to run the pump at the required speed, to check the temperature. If the temperature is too high or too low, take action to regulate the temperature. Those sort of technologies. Of course, from the very beginning, ICT was used because these controls and these automation processes were achieved by using small controllers, PLCs or BMS controllers, which are usually installed in the same plant room, and where engineers and designers could write their code, their software code, I mean, on these controllers, so that they tell the controller how to operate and how to run the plant room. So IT was from the start in BMS a very important aspect. However, what has changed, so again, to summarize, is well, this is actually a newer, a more recent requirement of BMS. In the 60s and in the 50s and in the 70s, the main scope of BMS was automation. Going forward, the need to save energy started to grow, and of course, BMS was the ideal tool to be used in buildings to improve on building efficiency by making sure, for example, that the pumps are run only when required, that the temperature is not set too high, because setting it too high means you're wasting energy for nothing. So the element of building management systems being used and introduced in buildings for wastage minimization started to grow. And of course, nowadays, sustainability and energy saving has become a very big must. Actually, it has become almost a survival thing for our planet. So as you can imagine, now the role of BMS has taken up much more priority. But to simplify and to clarify, because we speak of sustainability, this word is actually used and abused here everywhere. Everything is becoming sustainable, but in the case of building management, sustainability essentially means very simple: having an efficient building. So when we say we have a sustainable building, it means the building is efficient, and this matter of efficiency goes over and above, to be fair, BMS. It actually starts well before the BMS, because it starts in the cement factories, in the steel factories, in the transportation, because unfortunately buildings contribute a lot of the world emissions. But most of these emissions are coming not when you operate the building, but when you are actually building the building. Because concrete, cement, and transportation to build a building contributes a lot for the energy, for the emissions in the world. So that's one aspect. Of course, once the building is ready, the role of BMS kicks in, and BMS now starts to have the role of making the building more efficient. Now, of course, when we talk about efficiency, we might immediately say, okay, energy consumption. So if we reduce consumption, we are improving efficiency. That's certainly true, and that's certainly a huge role for BMS. But when we talk about the term hyper-efficient building, we're not talking about a building efficient on energy consumption, but also efficient on space utilization, for example. So if you are a business and you are hiring a 1,000 square meter office block to run your business, using a BMS and using the right technology and using ICT in BMS, You can identify, listen, I am hiring 1,000 square meters, renting 1,000 square meters, but the systems are showing me that in truth, I'm using only 80% of this building. So perhaps I can save on the rent and I can reduce the amount of space used and rent it out. So these decisions can be taken if you have the right systems in place and the right BMS technology in place. So that's why I'm saying efficient building and hyper efficiency is no longer focusing only on energy, but it's focusing also on use of space. And also it's focusing on, and this is a very important topic, and it's, to be honest, is the hardest to measure with BMS, is the human factor, because at the end of the day, the buildings are built and used to host guests, to host people. It could be a hotel where you're hosting a guest. It could be an office block where you're hosting your employees. So again, for the employer or for the hotelier, knowing that the guests inside the building or the persons inside the building, the occupants of the building in short, knowing that the occupants of the building are feeling comfortable, for example, is a very big issue. It's a very big thing. Why? And I will explain why very shortly. I will come back to this later. This is the slide that I am talking about. In hyper-efficient buildings, like I'm saying, we have three aspects. We have the energy aspect. We have to maximize energy consumption. We have to maximize space, and we have to keep people happy. That's why I said the last one is the most difficult, because keeping people happy is very difficult. Even during election times, it's difficult, let alone throughout the rest of the year. So, but these numbers here, I think, are quite eye-opening, because, as I said, traditionally, BMS was more focusing on energy saving. And nowadays, it is hugely important to save energy, because we need to save the planet, basically. So for sure, this should be the biggest target for BMS, because we need to save ourselves, basically. But after we consider energy consumption, if we look at the economics of things, we see that these are, of course, not 100% accurate, but they give an idea. And what we're saying here is that the energy consumption per square meter in a building is usually 10 times less than what a person spends on rent on a building. And it's 100 times less than what he spends on the salaries of the people occupying the building. So what we're saying here is that, listen, BMS has always been traditionally used for energy saving. It's great, but we also needed to save us space, and we also needed to keep the people happy. And that's where the last one is where the biggest challenges lie, because it's difficult to tell when somebody is happy, let alone a whole office is happy. And that's where perhaps ICT can help us the most, because with newer technologies, we can start to identify the well-being of people. And for example, a very simple thing that we usually do is we keep a parameter of how many times, say you have an open plan with 20 people in that open plan, how many times people try to change, for example, the temperature set point on their ACs. If the system realizes that, for example, in this area of the offices, people are changing the temperature very often, that could mean that they are not comfortable, that something is wrong. So just by having the count of how many times temperature is changed during a day, for example, gives you an idea of how comfortable the people inside the room are. So that could be a useful information for the owner or the guy in charge of the office to understand whether everything is going fine or not. Then there are other more objective measures. Like, for example, we all know that having the right air quality in the office is very important for the health, but also from a selfish point of view from the employer side, because having people in an office where the air quality is not good, the employer himself will suffer, because the performance of the people will surely deteriorate. So even it's a win-win situation. If the systems are there to control and maintain good air quality, both the workers and the employer will benefit. Then there are other aspects like light levels. You have to make sure that the light levels are correct, temperature, humidity, CO2. So there are a lot of parameters, objective parameters, which we have to keep in mind to make sure that the occupant of the building is comfortable. If I can go back just one slide, which is this one, which is of course very relevant for today's topic, is the term digital building. And what does this essentially say? It's quite simple. Basically, as we said before, we are facing a huge challenge of sustainability. The way we're going right now in the world is not sustainable. We have to reduce a lot the emissions of CO2, and we have to also reduce emissions of other gases. That's why there is the term net zero and CO2 emissions, because net zero is more encompassing. Net zero is taking into account all the emissions, not only CO2. And so basically net zero is even more stringent. But basically in the case of BMS, both are leading to the same thing, which is we have to improve efficiency in buildings. Of course, if you have a building with an old equipment, with old HVAC equipment, like an old chiller, I mean, this is inefficient and it will be wasteful for sure. So in the long run, changing the chiller is the solution. However, studies have shown that even if you have a very old chiller and a very old HVAC system, for example, just by implementing a BMS and controlling better this equipment, you can get savings of up to 30% in the entire building. So this is huge, because we're talking about when you add a building management system, it can be intrusive, because you might need to install sensors, you might need to install some cables, even if there is also the wireless option nowadays. But there is some work to be done. But it's nowhere near the effort and the money needed to change the entire HVAC system, for example. So the point is this: even if you have old equipment in an old building, adding a modern BMS will immediately, and studies shows that we can have savings of up to 30%. So essentially, this is a very quick win for building owners to apply these technologies and have this 30% reduction in consumption. And this is what the digital building term means. Essentially, you have a building which is nowadays, at present, for example, not controlled at all, or controlled with a very, very old technology, and you implement a digital system, a BMS system, which will help you reduce consumption by up to 30%, which is, of course, very, very, very big. So to close on the hyper-efficient building terminology, basically, we use the term hyper-efficient when we're talking about not just energy consumption, but also optimization of space and improving the occupant's experience. So basically, those are the three areas which a modern BMS should cater for. Okay, I will skip over this and goes to the areas which are more perhaps relevant for the digitization, because as I mentioned before, applying ICT technology to BMS is actually a big game changer. So how would we do a digital building, basically? And we start bottom up, and at the lowest layer, of course, we need to have equipment sensors in the building, which will be doing the actual monitoring of the system. If you wanted to measure, to control temperature, of course, you need to have your own temperature sensor. Then you need to get your own readings into the system to first of all measure the actual quality and the actual temperature, for example. The same thing applies for other parameters like light levels, CO2, you name it. You need to have basically a layer of sensors installed in your building. And technologies are various. As I mentioned, if you go into an existing building, it's sometimes not easy to install new cables. So there are wireless technologies which can be used to make connecting up of these sensors very easy. IoT, for example, is one technology. It is very much related to BMS because it's essentially consisting of having sensors in the field and connecting them to a bigger system, cloud-based system most often, that does the analysis later. But in terms of technology, it's very, very similar to what we do in BMS. You have a sensor connected to your system, and the system is collecting data from this sensor. So IoT, in truth, is almost an extension of BMS. Okay, and then of course you can have groups of these done. Then the interesting part comes in, and the relevant part for this discussion comes in, which is the digitalization. Once we start collecting this data, and imagine a building can have thousands of sensors, so you end up in a very short time with millions of readings taken. If you take a reading every 5 minutes for a sensor, after a week you have thousands of readings, and multiply that by the number of sensors, you end up with a huge number of data, which of course makes it impossible for a human being to analyze in detail. And not just the analysis part is important, of course, this is the first step. Then you need to analyze and understand what's going on to be able to take action and improve the efficiency. And that's where digitalization comes in particular with the use of artificial intelligence. AI is very suited for this application because it would be using the large amount of data that the BMS is collecting from the building, and using the AI technology to identify patterns and also slice and dice the data in various elements, and taking into account different parameters. For example, if you are trying to analyze the performance of a cooling system, say an air conditioning system in a high-rise building, which might contain, even in Malta, 700 or more AC units in one building, and you're trying to understand the performance of these 700 indoor units, you can imagine that it becomes very difficult to analyze manually, because you have so many different factors. You have, first of all, the building has 4 sides, so you have the side facing the sun, the side away from the sun, so there's already a difference in performance. There are rooms who are occupied, rooms which are not occupied, rooms at different levels, rooms used for different use, a private apartment or an office block, or a data center, or a corridor. So there are so many of these parameters that it will become impossible to have a human person looking at this data and getting out meaningful information. You can do it once. You can assign a guy for a month to analyze the data and get you some results, but this is not the scope of the system. The systems have to be something ongoing. You have to have a background process which is always checking and always adapting to the building and always getting you new information. And that's where artificial intelligence actually kicks in, and it's being done. We have, even us as a company, we're doing research on AI applied to BMS, and we have also an engineer doing a PhD degree on AI applied to BMS. So we're taking it very seriously. So there is a lot of opportunity here. The good thing about this is that even from a career point of view, it can be, we're not limited. Whereas when you do a BMS, it's very limited and very focused on the physical presence in a building. So it has to be, if we're working on a BMS, we have to be very close to the building site. We have to be on the same island, essentially. But if you're doing AI technology on BMS, this AI technology can be used and applied everywhere in the world. So you could be doing some analysis or applying AI technology to a building in South Africa or South America or New York or Japan. The same technology applies, and you can do it remotely. So we think there is a lot of opportunity there, even as a business. Okay, then there are, of course, other technologies which are also very useful in BMS, like, for example, having 2D and 3D models of the equipment. It's very important to have a model showing if you have, for example, a plant room where you have pumps and tanks and calorifiers and boilers, you show the equipment on the graphics, and you show parameters that you are reading from sensors, for example, temperature, pressure, speed, consumption. Those things are placed on the graphic, so that whenever somebody is looking at the system, he can have at a glance an idea of what's going on. That, however, it was the traditional way. Nowadays, again, we can do new technology like augmented reality, and we're using that as well to be able to get more information. So imagine you are the maintenance manager in a plant room in a hotel, and you are in front of your motors. You have 5 motors running, keeping up the pressure of the water for the guests, and you want to know more details about the motor. Once the motor is connected to the system, and you go with your mobile and your application in front of the motor, you can scan a QR code, for example, and the system will tell you, send you all the information on your mobile to tell you exactly the state of that motor. You can even use image recognition, but this sometimes is difficult, say, because if you have a plant room and you have, say, 5 or 6 motors, which are all identical, then the system cannot identify one from the other. So in that case, we use, as I said, a QR code. With the mobile or with your tablet, you scan the QR code. The system knows which motor you are pointing to, and it will send you on the screen all the information related to that motor, and that can facilitate maintenance, for example, in the plant room directly. Then there is, again, more new technology, which is called digital twin. Essentially, what this means is that you have a piece of hard equipment, like a motor or maybe a car, just to give a more basic example, and you have sensors in the car or in the motor, and these sensors you have enough information to be able to replicate that motor on your IT system, on your platform. So basically, you create a twin of that motor, but this time the twin is not actual physical motor, but it's a motor inside your system. But it's a twin because everything that is happening on the physical motor, thanks to the sensors that we have installed on the motor, are shown also on the digital twin. So then you can run simulations, you can check on the statuses of your physical motor by doing these on the digital twin. It's something which is growing a lot, and it has huge benefits as well. So this is the example I mentioned before. We have 600 or 700 ACs into a large building. So how can we be sure that they are running all efficiently? Imagine 600 indoor units. Sometimes imagine you are, say, in an open office and you have, say, 6 or 7 indoor units. You can't even tell when you're sitting next to them, you can't even tell whether they are switched on or off, because there is noise, you're not sure, let alone having 600 of them. How can you be sure that all of them are running as efficiently? So here we're showing how you would go about this. We would connect our BMS to the systems, to the AC systems, usually using a VRF. We would measure the energy consumption of the VRFs, and then using an edge controller, send all this data to our cloud service, and where the analysis is done. And then on the cloud service, using software, AI technology, we would run analysis of the data being collected on the ground, and the software will then learn how to and identify potential issues. And you can have a large number of issues which can be identified. And the nice thing about this is that the sky is the limit. If you have an idea and I want to check some particular performance, you can write your own code with the AI technology, AI tools, and then run them on the system and get the results that you expect. So here, as you can imagine, the analytics side has no limit actually. But the end result is having more efficient running of the equipment, and for example, moving away from routine maintenance to condition-based maintenance. What does this mean? in buildings, what they usually do is say, imagine you have light bulbs, and once they are installed new, the BMS has a counter which is reset, and the BMS starts counting the number of hours these LEDs remain on. We all know that a light bulb have, say, 5,000 hours of life. So in the system, we say, okay, whenever a light bulb has been on for 5,000 hours, send us a message so that we send the guy to replace that light bulb. This is schedule-based maintenance, but this can be good or bad because the 5,000 figure is actually an average. So you can have LEDs which can last 6,000 hours, not 5,000. And you can have LEDs which last 4,000 hours. So you can either be overshooting the number and having LEDs running for 1,000 hours and underperforming, or you might be replacing LEDs before they are actually due for replacement because you're basing yourself basically only on time. So what we do with BMS is, rather than just keeping the timer, we also check the performance by, for example, in the case of LEDs, checking the lux level. So we don't care much more about the time the LED is running, but we care only about whether it's giving enough lux level or not. And then we do it, this is what is called condition-based. So basically, you do the maintenance really when it's needed. It could be either before or after what was traditionally done. So yeah, and as I said, again, occupant comfort is always showing up because, as I said, it is a huge factor. Keep having people happy in a building, or at least let's not say happy, comfortable perhaps, because they'll be comfortable and unhappy. But keeping them comfortable is a very big scope of having a BMS. That ends my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ruben. It was very interesting. We're running late, but I didn't want to stop you because it was very interesting, and it shows the real opportunities that there are out there. I know that we are running a bit late, but I'll open the floor to, perhaps we have 5 minutes where we can have some questions from the floor, but it is very interesting. First, hearing the presentation by Anthony about the real possibilities that there are out there, and then having a completely specialized area and knowing even the artificial intelligence and all the other opportunities. So we have a question here, which is, how is the situation in the construction industry with respect to building management solutions?
I think, yeah, I mean, so in general, the scope of BMS is increasing, and the usefulness of a BMS is becoming always more appreciated. So, you know, the way construction is done in Malta, usually you have the consulting firm, which is, unlike other places, in Malta, unfortunately, we have a separation between the architectural and the engineering, the M&Ds. This is, I think, quite not unique for Malta, but it's different from other places. But essentially, this is not ideal because a building is performs both in terms of structure and the equipment inside. But anyway, in Malta, it's not like that, unfortunately, but the M&D part, so the BMS, is almost always specified by the engineering firm, consultancy firm, who are doing the design of the building, and they include specifications for controlling of the HVAC, for example, controlling of the lighting, intelligent lighting, dimming, etc. For example, in hotels, they specify a lot room management so that you reduce the consumption. So in general, there is a lot. BMSs are being requested more often. Not always, unfortunately, and I have to say, even in, say, public buildings, for example, we have projects for schools where BMS is not included at all, which is a pity. But in general, it's a positive outlook, and the consultants who specify are becoming even more aware. of course, there is so many things going on and changing in BMS, like I've shown in my presentation. It is difficult for them even to keep up with the technology. So there's that challenge as well. But in general, it is specified and it is being requested. So it's good news for us BMS suppliers.
We have another question. So I think you answered this question. Also, what do you think is the future of building management solutions here in Malta?
No, I mean, if there are persons who are interested in the field, I encourage it. There is a lot of even job opportunities. We have them ourselves. If somebody wants to have an experience or even work for us, we're more than happy to tell them what we have. So no, there are opportunities and they are growing, as I said, and also with the need of the sustainability, it's becoming ever more important. Because sometimes, imagine you have a small domestic house. It might not be viable to install a BMS inside and spend a few €1,000 because the savings on energy won't make it viable. But with the need that the world has to save energy and to make the world sustainable, governments are obliged. Even the Maltese government has acquired funds from the European Union, and there's a huge chunk of money, millions. We're talking about some 150 millions, which have to be spent on making buildings more efficient. So these will end up being incentives to make up for this gap that I'm mentioning, because in a small home, it will be very like the solar water heater, for example. Solar water heater, if you buy it at the normal price, it might not be viable, or the return on investment might be too long. So people won't be interested. But if the government provides assistance, it makes it viable. The same holds for BMS. So on the one hand, we need to reduce energy consumption to save the world. It's a very big task we have to save ourselves. So, and the governments have the incentive, and they have agreed already to put in incentives into the sector. So because of this, for sure, it will grow and demand will grow. So I have a very positive outlook on the future for BMS because of this.
I think you because another question is, how do you think one of the targets that the EU is putting is about carbon neutrality?
Mm-hmm.
How the question is, how do you think building management solutions can effectively contribute towards buildings achieving carbon neutrality?
It's very simple, Daniel. Basically, BMS helps reduce the consumption and helps reduce wastage. I've seen in some slides, study shows that up to 60% of energy consumption in buildings is actually wasted. So by just reducing the waste, we will reduce the demand. BMS doesn't generate energy. It's not a renewable energy. It's basically there to improve efficiency. But that's one of the pillars of getting sustainability, using less. Once we use less, then the demand will reduce. And that is the first part of balancing the carbon neutrality. On the one hand, use less. On the other hand, generate more renewable, and these will. And this brings me to reminds me actually of a very important aspect. There is a big drive to achieve this. There is a big drive to use electrical energy. In buildings today, we still use a lot of gases, gas, for example, or diesel, or other non-renewable sources of energy. So the idea is with BMS, and not BMS, only in the world, basically, use more electrical energy. So basically what is termed the electrification of the energy. So all the energy should come from electric source, knowing very well that only the electric energy can be renewable completely through solar, through wind. Some, you know, a guy who is very fond of nuclear, for example, and this is coming from there. That nuclear, it's okay, very controversial, but it is renewable in the sense that it doesn't do any emissions. So potentially, The idea will be change everything to electric. So all cars become electric, all buildings become electric, but then you need electric energy, which is clean and renewable, or at least doesn't emit any carbon like nuclear. If whether nuclear is renewable or not is debatable, but it surely is not. It is not emitting any carbon. So in the carbon neutrality formula, it fits very well.
Thank you very much for your insights. As a Europe Direct and as a chamber, in fact, we have been for the past years now organizing the Youth for Entrepreneurship. And the last two editions were based on sustainability, and actually the idea mentioned by Ruben was one of the ways how to achieve this in Gozo by having small nuclear reactors with today's technology. It's possible. And I think that with the crisis we are living today, that may be an option that we may have to look into the future. But you touched on many topics that the European Commission today is in favor about, and there is the drive also achieving carbon neutrality, reducing our carbon emissions, and that I think through BMS can be an optimal solution to do this. So you mentioned Youth for Entrepreneurship. This year is going to focus on ideas related how to reduce having business ideas which can reduce the impact on climate change. And actually BMS can be one of this. So for youths out there, also those are following us through MCAST or MCAST students, please feel free to follow us and actually eventually apply for the idea. I would like to thank our speakers today. I would like to thank Ruben. I would like to thank Anton for giving us these very excellent presentations. The webinar will remain available on the Europe Direct Gozo Facebook page and will also be uploaded on the Gozo Business Chamber's YouTube page. I would like to thank the staff at the chamber, Gianluca and Joanne, and who assisted me, and Richard Grech, who despite being very, very busy at the moment, he is always helping us and was our technical coordinator during the webinar. Thank you, Richard. Please continue to follow us on Europe Direct's Facebook page for any future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prosit. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.